Every 10 minutes, a woman is killed by her family or partner around the world. That's tens of thousands of women dying every year, and these are just those cases that are recorded and reported. The killing of women because of their gender is known as femicide, with the United Nations calling it a shadow epidemic linked to unequal power structures in nearly every country. In India, the practice of dowry and a desire for economic independence in what is still a deeply patriarchal society is putting women at risk every day.
आज दिन में मारपीटा लड़ाई हुई और रात को फिर से मिल जा.
Priya has been living in hiding for a year. The 39-year-old mother of two has survived more than a decade of dowry violence and domestic abuse. We've changed her name and masked her voice to protect her identity.
तो सिपल सब आते वो मर जाते हैं, उसमें ताकत ज़्यादा है, तो मैं ये दब जाती हूँ.
First, she was harassed for a dowry, the money or goods that a woman brings to her husband or his family in marriage. Then, the sexual and physical assaults began. India doesn't recognize marital rape as an offence. Her husband also forced her to work when her family refused his dowry demands.
बड़ी बेटी को मारने लगा, मुझे मारने लगा. फिर देखा कि अब मेरी जान पे बना रही है. मैं देखिए पूरा गला दबाने लगा, धमकी पर धमकी देने लगा कि आज रात तक अगर मुझे पैसे नहीं मिले तो गई काम से. उसने मुझे एक बार बाइक से गिराने का कोशिश किया था. ये जो मैंने कमाने से मना कर दिया था दुकान पर बैठने से, तो बहुत कर्ज में हो गया था ना वो, तो कह रहा था कि माँ से 50,000 रुपये मांग के ला.
Priya finally fled one day, taking her children with her. She still gets daily death threats from her husband. Priya tells me she's lucky she is alive. The latest official data released in 2023 shows at least 20 women die in India every day in violence related to demands for dowry. Between 2017 and 2022, an average of 7,000 dowry deaths were reported every year, and experts say that's an underestimation. When Priya fled, she turned to Shakti Shalini, or empowered woman. Two women, Satyarani Chadda and Shahjahan Begum, set up the Delhi-based NGO nearly 40 years ago after their own daughters were burnt to death for insufficient dowry.
Through its early years, Shakti Shalini campaigned for and eventually succeeded in getting the government to introduce stricter dowry laws, making cruelty not just physical but also mental punishable by jail time. But that has not been enough to stop the scourge of dowry from taking lives.
Monica Tiwari, a counsellor at Shakti Shalini, says dowry demands are no longer limited to the wedding period but continue throughout the bride's life. At weddings, the birth of a child or the death of a relative, the woman's family is still expected to give gifts in cash or kind to her in-laws.
The groom's family somehow feels कि उनका right है, and they are bringing somebody outside their homes to their homes, तो खर्चा कैसे चलेगा? So it is a sort of financial compensation for the bride's family so that the bride is taken care of.
The consequences for failing to fulfill those demands can be dire. Cruelty by a husband or his relatives is the most reported violent crime against women, with a complaint lodged every 4 minutes. But many more cases go unreported. But dowry conviction rates are as low as 33%, and cases can drag on for decades in courts. Experts say this leaves women vulnerable to extended social stigma. That and the fact that violence at home has become normalized in Indian society.
Polls show that 35% of women and nearly just as many men believe that a husband is justified in beating his wife. And while that number has actually fallen for women over the years, there's actually been an increase in the number of men believing it's okay for a man to hit his partner or wife. And recent studies have also shown that as Indian women become financially independent, they face a higher risk of domestic violence.
A recent spate of gruesome murders of women has led to outrage nationwide, with some demanding India change how it records crimes against women. Anthropologist Nishi Mitra says while India does record deaths from violence linked to insufficient dowries and rape, authorities record most deaths of women as regular homicides. She's pushing the government to launch a femicide tracker.
How do we actually capture the life cycle violence that women experience from womb to tomb? So this is important because once we recognize that it is not just dowry is not the only reason. There is a context of sex selection. There is a context of women and girls being seen as burdens.
This group seeks to empower women to speak out and to recognize the first signs of abuse. Volunteers of NGO Jagori or Awaken are meeting on the outskirts of Delhi. Councillor Shalini illustrates how most abuse follows a repetitive cycle of tension, violence and temporary reconciliation.
पर जैसे जैसे शादी पुरानी होने लगती है, लाइक कई साल होने लगते हैं, तो सर्कल का जो टाइम है ना वो कम होता चला जाता है. लाइक जल्दी से टेंशन बिल्डिंग होगा, जल्दी से वायलेंस का इंसिडेंस आएगा, फिर ये होगा. यानी कि वायलेंस की जो सिवियरिटी है वो भी बढ़ जाती है और इंसिडेंट्स जो वायलेंस के हैं वो भी इंक्रीज जो है जल्दी होने शुरू हो जाते हैं.
Shalini says educating women is the first step towards saving lives. Jagori's volunteers are all survivors of domestic violence and now help empower other women, like Manju Devi, a mother of 3. For her, the abuse started when she first tried to look for work to become financially independent.
समझिए मैं इतना डर गई कि घर जाने का तो मैं सोच ही नहीं सकती थी कि मैं घर जाऊं. मैं सोचती थी कि अगर जाऊंगी तो मार के हाथ पांव तोड़ देगा. फिर नाजनी बोली कि कोई बात नहीं, तुम पुलिस को फोन करो, डरोगे तो मारवे ही करेगा, मार क्या पता जान से ही मार दे. मैं झुक के बोली, प्यार से बोली कि तुम बताओ, शायद मैं कमाऊं 7,000 या 8,000 रुपया अलग से आए तो क्या दिक्कत है. मैं बोली कि कहीं देखना, अगर तुम्हें भरोसा ना है तो तुम ही कहीं लगा दो ना. तुम्हें लगता है कि हाँ यहाँ अच्छे से काम कर लेगी और मेरे जान पहचान का तो लगा दो. और ये तरीका सबिता दीदी थी यहाँ पे, उन्हीं का दिया हुआ था.
Despite that, Manju says the daily violence has not stopped. It's a similar story for most of these women. Even though they've dared to speak out, they say traditional marriage and societal expectations maintain a chokehold on them, demanding silence and compliance, no matter the cost.
Femicide is a global problem, but it's felt acutely here in the United States. The country leads developed nations in female homicides and ranks 34th worldwide. Unlike other countries, the U.S. has no femicide-specific laws on the books, which some argue makes it hard to track the true scope of the problem. And now some experts are concerned that federal spending cuts to programs aimed at protecting vulnerable women, particularly Black women, could worsen what is already viewed as an unspoken epidemic in America.
An Aurora man will spend the rest of his life in prison for murdering his wife after deliberating.
Stunning testimony in a Collin County courtroom this afternoon after a married man is quickly convicted of murdering his girlfriend.
On average, 3 women are murdered by their husbands, boyfriends, or exes every single day in America.
Adam Bird confessed to killing his girlfriend back in 2023.
Many more are killed by other men they know, brothers, fathers, friends.
It's too many women out here losing their lives.
Despite the scale of violence, femicide is often thought of as an issue affecting low-income countries.
And then also,
in reality, studies have found that the U.S. accounts for 70% of all female gender-based killings among high-income countries.
Those that are looking outside without having a concept of the history of this country, the numbers of femicide in the United States could be shocking. But if you're aware of our history with regard to inequality and inequity, and also just brutal capitalism, we would understand that lives themselves have been commoditized. And so those that have the highest value are those that are protected. And those that have the least value, and typically that has been women across all races, have the least value and then are the least protected.
Black women are disproportionately at risk. These are just some of the women killed this year alone, captured on the website Black Girl Tragic. A recent study in the medical journal The Lancet found that Black women are 6 times more likely to be murdered than their white peers, and according to the United Nations, 3 times more likely to be killed by a domestic partner or family member. In the U.S., femicide is fueled by intimate partner violence and easy access to firearms, which can easily turn domestic abuse into domestic homicide. Research shows that nearly half of Black women in America have experienced sexual or physical violence and/or stalking at the hands of an intimate partner. Experts say structural racism and socioeconomic inequality also leaves Black women vulnerable.
When you don't believe that law enforcement will respond, or that when they do respond, you will be held accountable, or when they do respond, they might take your child into custody, or they might hurt your spouse, when you think that you may go into court and you're not going to be believed, when you don't think that you're going to have access to a safe house when you leave, then you're not going to do that. And when things get so bad to the point that you think you may leave your life, that's the point that you make that call. The two was perfect.
Ujima's whole mission is to intervene long before it gets to that point, through training, policy advocacy, and community outreach.
So they can use the virtual reality glasses and all these things like pop off the screen.
It recently put together this animated comic book, which is being distributed at historically Black colleges and universities across the country to raise awareness about the warning signs of domestic abuse.
He's been forcing me to share my location, tracking me on campus, pressing me to send pics. It's too much.
People will say, okay, so
but some of Ujima's work is now under threat as President Donald Trump pushes to eliminate anything that seems race-specific and to slash federal spending. Cotman says Ujima has already lost one grant worth $3.5 million, $1 million of which was earmarked for smaller organizations on the ground.
So that was $1 million that was going to go directly to service providers. It wasn't for educational training. This was literally for responding in the middle of the night, providing clothes, providing food, providing childcare. Those dollars are no longer available.
The administration has also slashed violence prevention programs and mental health funding, rolled back gun safety regulation, and under the new so-called Big Beautiful Bill, 12 million of the poorest Americans are expected to lose their health insurance. 3 million will lose food assistance.
All of these programs that are being cut will only have the economic effect of creating more household stressors for individuals, which means that for those families that are on the edge, it's not just children that are at risk, higher risk for abuse and adversity, but it's also women that are at higher risk.
Nearly 30 countries have enacted laws that specifically address femicide. The U.S. isn't one of them. Jacqueline Campbell has been researching domestic violence for more than 40 years. While she says femicide-specific laws may work in some countries, she doesn't believe it will prevent murders in the U.S. Instead, she thinks the definition of femicide needs to be broadened out to capture the full extent of the problem and create lasting, comprehensive solutions.
It's way too simplistic to say it's because she's a woman.
And what is missed if we put too much of a heavy emphasis on femicide being tied to misogyny?
We're failing to get him into some sort of treatment. We're failing to take his guns away. We're missing the interventions that we need to be providing for kids who are growing up in homes where there's way too much violence.
2023 murder. Important steps, experts say, towards addressing America's unspoken femicide epidemic. Where her body was later found.
Almost 1 in 3 women worldwide will be subjected to violence in their lifetime, usually at the hands of men. In Australia, it's been called a national crisis. Last year was a record year for violent deaths of women. This wall bears the names and faces of the victims. It's prompted the federal government to pledge billions of dollars for intervention and frontline support services. But advocates warn it's nowhere near enough to stamp out gender-based violence. A haunting reminder in the shadows of a Melbourne laneway. Yet another woman is dead, her face now on a mural.
She's 47 years old. Leanne's body was actually found dumped in bushland across the road from her house.
Journalist and femicide researcher Sherelle Moody has been documenting violent deaths of women and children for years. She's counted more than 170 since January last year. For her, it's deeply personal. Decades ago, her stepfather was jailed for murdering 2 girls.
Everything I do is in their memory. It's a tribute to them.
Thousands have protested across the country in the past year, calling for an end to gender-based violence. But not only do women keep dying, attempts to raise awareness are met with resistance. Vandals often target this memorial.
Someone came down and painted over most of the faces with the words "War on Men." That person has no idea about respecting women.
It's an ongoing fight for recognition. About 90% of these women were allegedly killed by someone they knew. Yet many aren't even included in official homicide statistics.
We find that, particularly in intimate partner violence, the partner uses a vehicle to kill the other person. Quite often, the charge there is not homicide, it's not even manslaughter, it's usually dangerous driving causing death.
No amount of jail time can bring these women back, but for many victims' families, the justice system adds to their pain. In Victoria's Supreme Court, a man who killed 2 sex workers, Yi Chi-law and Hyun Suk-jun, recently avoided a murder conviction, instead pleading guilty to manslaughter, receiving a maximum 14-year prison sentence. With parole laws, he could be out even sooner. Many advocates are devastated, while prosecutors are appealing the sentence.
I think it's really disgrace. The result of 14 years is not enough.
Legal experts say challenges begin well before the courtroom. Many victims are too afraid to seek protection in the first place, especially migrant and refugee women fleeing family violence.
One is their visa status. They may be a dependent on their partner, so they've got a fear of deportation. They also sometimes don't trust the systems, so they've got that fear of authorities.
Leaving an abusive relationship is one of the most dangerous times for victims. Simone O'Brien ended her relationship with a man after he showed signs of controlling behaviour. She lives with the scars from that day.
All I can remember is being on the ground, and next minute I look up and I could see a baseball bat coming down down on me.
The mother of 3 survived nearly 50 hits. Doctors used screws and titanium plates to hold her skull together. 13 years and dozens of operations later, she's still blind in one eye.
Being that prisoner in my body for the rest of my life, I have got this attitude that never give up, keep smiling.
Simone is now advocating to change various laws to better protect victims. She also shares her story to educate people about seeking help.
Several schools that I've been doing, for 6-7 years have actually got domestic violence as a part of their school curriculum, and that's what we need.
In 2022, the Australian government initiated a national plan to end gender-based violence within a generation. It prioritises prevention And for the first time, a government-funded study has shed light on perpetrators and the critical role of mental health. Researchers say 35% of men have admitted to emotional abuse or using violence against an intimate partner. That's up from 1 in 4 men in less than a decade. It means that every year, an estimated 120,000 men are resorting to abuse for the first time.
So men who had clinically relevant depression symptoms, men who also had earlier reported thoughts, plans or even attempts around suicide were much more likely to use intimate partner violence.
Part of the solution is addressing the mental health issues of men. The 10 to Men study shows staying socially connected and positive father-son relationships are key to lowering the risk.
Our job is to sort of provide evidence to try to maximise the chance of interventions being successful so that hopefully we can start to see a downturn in this sort of type of behaviour.
Could I have done something differently?
David Nugent is one of the men driving that change. From running group sessions to address the root causes of violence and anger,
We get caught on a cycle.
to helping men online from all over the country. His approach is unique because, unlike most behaviour change programs, he mentors men for years, teaching them how to stop being physically or emotionally abusive.
The other part to it is the misogynistic role models or beliefs that are passed on about, real men don't cry, real men don't show emotions. The whole package is part of this problem.
David says there aren't enough in-depth programs or funding to meet demand, even though his work helps men turn their lives around.
I started being a lot more abusive, quite physical, quite verbal, but not realising that was actually abuse. The manliest thing you can do is own up to your behaviours.
Many past participants become role models for a new wave of men seeking help.
I also have a son as well, so I get to do that ripple effect where he's not going to carry on those behaviours.
A transformation that can break the cycle, rewriting the future for the next generation to live in safety.